Coming to order. This is time, place set for the meeting of the Utility Finance Oversight Committee. Could we have the clerk take roll and see if we have a quorum?
Chair Johnston.
Oh, present.
Vice Chair Turchek. Member Johns. And Member Connect. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda, now we have a quorum, is public comment. The public is invited at this time to provide comment on any topic that relates to a matter over which this public body has supervision, control, jurisdiction, or advisory power, including any such matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. Are there any members of the public here who wish to address the committee at this time? Let the record reflect there are none. Item 4 on the agenda is approval of the minutes. And we're looking for approval of the April 10th, 2025 draft meeting minutes that were circulated with the package. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from the April 10th, 2025 Utility Oversight Finance Committee minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? April 10th, 2025 draft meeting minutes are approved. Item 5. And specifically, item 5A for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding electing a chairperson and vice chairperson for the Utility Finance Oversight Committee. Currently, I am the chair. Ms. Turzek is the vice chair. I believe I'm termed out, or it's the policy of these committees to have rotating chairs. I've been chair for 2 years, which I think consists of 2 meetings, I'll just point out.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I haven't been chair for 24 years. Last time for me.
I can see that policy is loosely adhered to.
Yeah.
Do we have any volunteers or nominations to serve as chair of this committee for the next year?
I'll volunteer if nobody else does.
I would second that for Mr. Connect to be chair for the next year. Are there any other nominations? Anyone else want to take it? Hearing none, we have a motion to second that Ron Connect become chair for the 2027 meetings or subsequent meetings in 2026. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, moving on. Vice Chair. Ms. Turzek, let me just see if there's, are you willing to serve as Vice Chair for a second year?
I'm willing to serve as vice chair again.
In that case, I nominate.
And I second the nomination.
We have a motion and a second that Cynthia Turzek serve as Vice Chair for the upcoming meetings in 2026 and 2027. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? None. Okay. We have our officers going forward. Item 5B for possible action. Discussion possible action regarding the tentative fiscal year 2027 wastewater fund budget is compliance with adopted financial policies and recommendation of the Board of Supervisors regarding the tentative wastewater fund budget for fiscal year 2027. Ms. Stevenson?
Okay, good afternoon. Jamie Stevenson, Accounting Manager for the record. Before I start, I'd like to thank Courtney and Andy from Public Works for helping me to prepare these budgets. For all three of the utility funds that I will talk about today, I've included the utility rate increases of 2.9%, which is the CPI for the West Urban area for December of 2025, as per the utility rate schedule. Also, across all three funds, salary and benefit increases include our annual contractual increases and estimated 10% increase to medical insurance. Our non-operating income consists mostly of investment income, and we budget conservatively. For the wastewater fund, our salaries and benefits are expected to increase $246,792. This is due to our annual contractual increases for employees and anticipated benefit rate increases. We've also included an increase for promotions of employees expected to receive some certifications. The supplemental requests that are not included in this tentative budget that were submitted are for promotions of a sewer technician 3 to a senior sewer technician, and for promotion of a wastewater plant mechanic to a senior wastewater plant mechanic. The total increase of these supplementals is $18,631. Our budgeted services and supplies will increase as a result of increases to our internal service charges. Those are part of the citywide cost allocation plan. The supplemental requests for services and supplies this year are for chemicals for $200,000, and there's one for a reduction of $31,500 for mosquito control. The increase for chemicals is due to price increase and volatility in the market. And the reduction for mosquito control is to reallocate the overall increased cost of mosquito control across other city funds. The total budget for mosquito control will be split to $35,000 each for the Stormwater Fund, Wastewater Fund, Quality of Life Fund, and General Fund, for total funding of $140,000. If those supplemental requests are approved, they'll be included in the final fiscal year 2027 budget. Next year's planned capital spending for wastewater is $6,246,000. The larger projects that are planned are lift station reconstruction and wastewater line replacement. Here's a listing of the planned capital projects over the next 5 years. The wastewater utility fund tentative budget for fiscal year 2027 meets all of the city's adopted financial policy requirements. The line graphs represent the financial goals, and the vertical bar graphs represent the projected cash balances. Based on industry standards, operating reserve is 30 to 45 days minimum of operating expenses. The capital reserve goal is calculated as 2% of capital assets. The system reinvestment funding goal is equal to depreciation and amortization. The debt to equity ratio goal is at least 50-50, and the debt service coverage ratio goal is 1.0 or above. Are there any questions on the wastewater fund?
Do any of the members of the committee have questions for Ms. Stevens?
I don't want to jump the gun, Mr. Chairman, but I did want to ask about page 21, the fiscal summary for enterprise funds, the wastewater utility fund. Is that timely at this point?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, page 21 is wastewater utility fund under fiscal summary for enterprise funds.
Yes.
Am I getting ahead of you there, or?
No, this is a summary of the,
Yeah.
of the budget. And
I have some questions on that, Mr. Chairman.
Go right
Sure.
ahead, Ron. I think, if this, it seems like those questions would relate most to this agenda item.
Okay, so in the past, you may recall, I've gone into great detail on various budget items. I'm going to take a completely different approach today.
Okay.
And in particular, I'm going to look at the revenue line up there on the top of page 21 for the last few years, 18 million something, and 19 million for this year. And that's a 2.88% increase. Do you calculate that basically just off of the previous year's revenue and increase that by 2.88, or is there a a rate base and expenses type calculation that yields that?
The calculation that I do takes the prior year, and I get that amount, and then I take the revenues collected to date for this year.
Right.
And so I'll use that revenues collected to date, and then whatever date that ends at, I will look at last year's collections and make my best assumption of what we're going to have for the end of this year. And then from that, I'll add the rate increase per the utility rate schedule.
Gotcha, okay. I want to congratulate you on this and your next two percent changes, 2.88 and similar numbers, charges for services to ratepayers. But I also want to throw in one caveat on that. But,
Okay.
2.88% is the best we've seen, I think, in a while. And it's a great job, and that to me is the way things ought to proceed with a utility, is very slow increases in the services rates. So, great job.
Yes, we are following that utility rate schedule that you recommended to the board.
Well, happy for that.
Yes.
What I want to say is in general about service rates. They should maybe increase or not increase. There are times when they should go down over time. It's a great thing that it's only 2.88, but see this thing? 100 years ago, if you tried to make a call from San Francisco to New York, it cost 3 days' wages for average labor. Today, well, it probably gets lost in the service fee, or it's effectively zero or very close to zero. And I could give you lots of other examples, as you know, but my point is that in a competitive sector, over time, the prices go down in real terms. If you look at mattress and box springs from 1926, it's a lot lower now in real terms. Same thing with cars, et cetera. And you may have to make adjustments for the quality of the service that you get. My first car didn't have a backup camera and stuff like that. But in any case, in competitive sectors, which should be, in general, widely our reference point, in competitive sectors, costs go down over time, which is why we can in fact have these things and bunches more that people didn't have 50 and 100 years ago. So I would hope at some point we look at the possibility of rates going down in real terms. And instead of a 2.88% nominal, you present us with a real cost adjustment in real terms, that is adjusting out the inflation, and that shows zero or maybe negative. That would be very helpful, and it would be something I would like to brag on this department, this city, and this board about. So that's my big thought for the day.
Okay,
And again, I think y'all are doing a fine job, and keep it up.
thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Cynthia, any questions?
No.
Ron, questions? I had a couple.
Sure.
Ms. Stevenson, just actually sort of on the same idea as Mr. Connect here. And that really is on the 2.9% CPI-U, one of the CPI indexes that you're using for rate increases. How does that translate into rates, into the rate increase? And that you're having, obviously, the target is to increase revenues by that amount, but you have a constantly changing number of customers, and anything that's volumetric, like gallons, that changes depending on the water year, probably, and the price, to the extent you have people reducing use because it costs more. So how do you do a pro forma the next year when you're saying, okay, we want to increase revenues, we want to increase rates 2.9%, or do you just increase all rates 2.9%? How's that working? And if you do 2.9% increase in rates, that may or may not translate into 2.9% increase in revenues. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, I can jump in on that one.
Okay.
Andy Hummel, for the record, utility manager for Carson City. The 2.9% is applied to the rates per code. We apply that to all of the rate fees, water, wastewater, and the stormwater fee. That doesn't, as you've both discussed, necessarily apply to what revenue will actually do. Wastewater is maybe a little more stable. So we tend to see about the same amount of flow to the plant. And the single family, the residential rate is a fixed rate rather than based on water consumption. The water revenues, they do vary up and down depending on usage each year, whether we're having a nice wet year and people don't turn their sprinklers on until May one year. That'll actually reduce our revenue. It also reduces our expenses. But yeah, we do see some variability because of that usage pattern.
And just following up on that, for example, connection fees, those aren't subject to the 2.9, or are they?
They are subject to an annual increase as well, but it's tied to the Engineering News and Review Construction Cost Index. But they are also capped at a max of 3%, as is the rate increase.
And with the construction going on in Carson City, is your customer, how does that 2.9 compare to customer growth?
Customer growth has been typically around 1% or less, is what we've seen annually.
And does the 2.9 still look good as far as meeting the financial metrics that we're trying to achieve, or are we falling behind? And I mean, just looking, it looks to me like it's problematical. Go ahead.
Jamie tells me it looks great.
Well, in the graph that you're looking at right now, you can see, we ended fiscal year '25 well above our goals. But that's because a lot of our planned projects take time to complete. And so, in our budgets, we have, in our budget, we have that all planned. We're going to spend it all, but we still meet the goals even with our spending. And so, I don't know if that answers your question, but
Well, I guess another, go ahead.
Oh,
Well,
no, no,
go
no, no.
ahead.
I was gonna say, if you had a question, go ahead.
Well, I guess, the, with respect to the wastewater and water and stormwater, does it look like that's gonna work for the near future? Will the Utilities Division be able to live within those constraints of rate increases based on the CPI indices?
This is our second year of doing that increase. So far, it seems to be meeting our needs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cynthia, you had a question?
Yeah, so I was just going to offer a little bit of color based on your question. So I work for the Public Utilities Commission, and so what we have for our companies is we actually use the gross domestic product deflator, which is a little bit different than what they use. So what it was for this year was actually 2.971%, and so it's a little bit higher. And what we tend to find is it's less of a rate shock, so there's less issue with water customers decreasing their use, because instead of having one big rate case every 3 years, 10 years, whatever, you end up with customers easing into their rate increases. So I doubt there's going to be much of a decrease in use. So what we've had with water companies that wait so long between rate cases is you end up with that depression of use, and then for us, we have privately held use of water companies, and so they don't recover the costs that they wanted to capture with that rate case. But I think because Carson City was smart in the way they set their rates, that they tried to increase the rates, but then now have the CPI to increase them with the increase of whether it's insurance or, like she said, with the chemical increases, whatever costs that come along with inflation, or gas, it's slowly but surely, increasing the cost. So there shouldn't be that depression of uses one would expect with a sudden rate increase. So I think hopefully it wouldn't be that much of a difference.
Helpful background.
And I strongly disagree with you, Mr. Connect. I don't think rates should ever go down or negative, but sorry to the customers, but I think that's a little too optimistic. You hit the nail on the head. There's competition when you have cell service. You don't have competition, it's a monopoly. So you don't get to choose who you get your water from, unless you want to get a bucket and go down to the river. So
Ron, another one?
Just a couple more things. First of all, thank you for that, Cynthia, and I agree with you that we always ought to look at this in the big picture sense as how do we perform relative to the private sector? And that's what I was saying before. But I also agree with one other thing. The Federal Reserve has been talking about 2.9 whatever, 7 or something as our general inflation rate. And if we apply that to your charges for services of 288, we're already at a negative number in the real sense as opposed to the nominal sense. So doing a great job. And by the way, Mr. Chairman, throughout these pages, we're going to see decreases in the capital spending by substantial amounts from the last year to this year. So I agree with you. I'm always concerned about the financial metrics and coverage ratios and so forth. But with less being spent on the capital side, I think we'll probably be in pretty good shape. And thank you, Andy, and Mrs. Stevenson for that.
thank you.
Okay, any further questions or comments from the committee members? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 5C, discussion possible action regarding the tentative fiscal year 2027 water fund budget. It's compliance with adopted financial policies. Ooh, I suppose this was an action item. We didn't
Yeah, I
take
think we
action.
need to
Yes.
take action.
Good
to
discussion, but
adopt. Yeah,
what was it all for?
yes.
Okay, let's see. Do we have a motion
Mr. Chair,
to acknowledge the tentative water fund budget for fiscal year 2027 is in compliance with the adopted financial policies and to recommend that the Board of Supervisors approve the tentative wastewater fund budget for fiscal year 2027?
Mr. Chair, prior to the motion being made, just a reminder for action items, the common procedure, at least for Carson City, is to check for public comment before the action is taken for each item.
Thank you for that, Mr. Burr. Is that a new policy on public comment?
I can't speak to how new it is. It's done at every other commission that I staff, though. So.
Okay, happy to oblige. That should be on the agenda, though, shouldn't it? If you're going to take public comment intermixed with action items, that's unfamiliar to me in my experience with public meeting law. But do we have any members of the public who wish to comment before we proceed to action on the item 5B of the agenda? It appears there are no members of the public commenting on that item.
Mr. Chairman, may I move approval, as you suggested a moment ago, of the wastewater fund?
We have a motion from Mr. Knecht. Do we have a second?
Second?
We beat you.
Second from Ms. Turzak. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. The motion is approved. We will now move on to the next item on the agenda. Item 5C, discussion possible action regarding the tentative fiscal year 2027 water fund budget. Its compliance with adopted financial policies and recommendation of the Board of Supervisors regarding the tentative water fund budget for fiscal year 2027. Ms. Stevenson?
Thank you, Jamie Stevenson, for the record. Okay, for the water fund, as with the wastewater fund, the planned rate increases per the utility rate schedule are included in our revenue estimates. That's the CPI of 2.9%. Our salaries and benefits are set to increase $290,513. That includes contractual increases and our anticipated benefit rate increases. We've also included costs for promotions of employees who are anticipated to achieve certifications. Our services and supplies will increase by $120,232 as a result of increased internal service charges from the city's cost allocation plan. Supplementals for the water fund include $50,000 for water purchase due to commodity cost increases and $300,000 for professional services for additional system analysis and studies, including the master planning and resource planning. Our planned capital spending for fiscal year 27 is $4,640,000. The larger project we have planned is our water line replacement and rehab. Here is a listing of our 5-year planned capital expenditures. And the city's fiscal year 2027 water fund budget meets all of the city's adopted financial policy requirements. For this fund, industry standards say operating reserve should be 60 to 90 days of minimum operating expenses. That's the only difference in the goals between this and the wastewater. Are there any questions on water fund?
Members of the committee? Ron, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll just say my previous comments apply here too, for all the good reasons that I gave them, and Ms. Stevenson, another good job, you too, Andy. But to that gentleman over your right shoulder, I hope that when we go to contract negotiations with labor, we'll keep in mind that basically inflation or something like that is about the right standard, besides the increases for promotions, et cetera. But I think, I hope to see that I love our employees. They do a great job and we should pay them right, but I think we are. And so my reference point there is inflation. Also, by the way, when I talk about 100 years ago, sort of like Ronald Reagan, I know because I was there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Knecht. Other questions from the committee members?
Since you brought up labor, how's your retention of your employees at this time?
It is definitely better than where we were a year or two ago. We're not seeing the turnover, people, especially on the water side, leaving for Tumwa, which has been very welcomed. We do have a couple of retirements. One happened a couple of weeks ago. He called it a retirement, but maybe a midlife crisis. Ran off to Florida on us to kind of a change of lifestyle for him and his family on our sewer crew side, and then our environmental control foreman is leaving us in June. But she's been with us a long time.
Because I would like to keep that in mind, that even though inflation might seem like a reasonable time to, or basis of salaries, I would like to keep in mind that there's other places that pay more than Carson City, and you don't want to create a vacuum for everybody to move over to Tumwa or other agencies when we want to keep the people that have the knowledge that is priceless.
That's called human capital.
And I know in more than a couple of years, you're going to have the silver tsunami of everybody leaving. So you have to train the people that you have and keep them.
Ron Johns, any questions? Yeah, so I had just a question. Would a Tumwa fill up? They topped out?
Hopefully. Yeah.
No jobs left to fill.
Yeah.
I was looking just on the benefits as a percentage of salaries. And it looked like it was like 63%, somewhere around there. Are we still seeing growth there on the, I mean, I know PERS had some huge increases in the retirement contributions. So any intel as to whether we're seeing any better news on the retirement or group health side?
No, our health insurance came back at what we included in our estimate, so there were no adjustments needed. It came back at a 10% increase. And then I have not heard if PERS plans any more increases. Every 2 years, they usually do an analysis. And we did our last PERS increase for fiscal year '24. And we did not get notification of one for the coming year, as far as I know.
Thank you. Mr. Knecht?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One more thing, since you all raised PERS. And I've been on this bandwagon for a while. PERS does an outstanding job at managing their investments, perhaps the best in the country, and I've told them so before. Their problem is they don't want anybody to see any detail behind whatever their projections are. They basically hide all their laundry, dirty or otherwise, in their accountants and offices. If you can, please lean on PERS to get more open about their projections, their numbers, et cetera, the underlying figures for the bottom line where they say, here's what we're going to charge you. When I was controller, I worked real hard on that, and they resisted real hard, and they're still hiding their dirty laundry in their accountants' offices. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
It's in the public interest for you to do so.
Carson City takes on PERS. I don't know. Might be outside the scope of this item, but that was the only question I had. Any further questions? Okay, do we have any public comment on this agenda item for members of the public in attendance? Let the record reflect none. Let's see, we're on water here, so. Do we have a motion to approve the tentative water fund budget for fiscal year 2027 is in compliance with the adopted financial policies and to recommend that the Board of Supervisors approve the tentative water fund budget for fiscal year 2027?
Mr. Chairman, I move to acknowledge that the tentative water fund budget for fiscal year 2027 is in compliance with the adopted financial policies and recommended Board of Supervisors approve the tentative water fund budget for fiscal year 2027.
We have a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is approved. We will now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 5D, discussion possible action regarding the tentative fiscal year 2027 stormwater utility fund budget, its compliance with adopted financial policies, and a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors regarding the tentative stormwater utility fund budget for fiscal year 2027. Ms. Stevenson.
Thank you, Jamie Stevenson, for the record. For the Stormwater Utility Fund, we've included our rate increase of 2.9%. Salaries and benefits are set to increase $46,613. Again, that's our contractual increases and our anticipated benefit increases. This fund also has some planned promotions for employees budgeted in. Our services and supplies are budgeted to increase $38,022 due to increase in internal service charges. The supplemental for $35,000 for mosquito control that I mentioned during the wastewater presentation is the only supplemental that was submitted for this fund. For capital projects, we have $1,925,000 budgeted. Our largest project is for citywide stormwater improvements. And here's a listing of our 5-year planned capital expenditures. And the Stormwater Utility Fund fiscal year 2027 budget meets all the city's adopted financial policy requirements. The operating reserve for the Stormwater Fund is 45 days minimum of operating expenses. Are there any questions on stormwater?
Members of the committee, questions? Mr. Johns?
I just was looking for an update on the Bowers area for stormwater, where we stand on that.
And this might be a good one for me to bring up our new stormwater program manager to tell us. Amanda? She's walking up. This is Amanda Singleton. She is fairly recently taking on the role of our stormwater program manager and doing a great job. Kind of internally, one of our successes of bringing her up from, she started as an intern with us initially. Yeah. So it's been great having her. Go ahead.
Amanda Singleton, Stormwater Manager. So Bowers Lane, that one we are waiting for a proposal and then going into design this year.
Follow-ups there?
I just have one question in general about our capital budgets and our operating budgets. To what extent has the fund that's been going on out there on William Street increased any of our utility costs, if you know?
We do have capital investment going on across all three funds with that project. Mainly just pipeline replacement, a little bit of upsizing on the water and wastewater. Stormwater, we took advantage in a couple of spots of adding bigger pipe, getting drainage across William Street where we needed it, things like that.
So you took advantage of that. So the idea there is sometime down the road in the future, the upsizing would have occurred, but it was, we saved on some of the dirt and digging costs by doing it now.
Yeah, and the pavement more than anything, being able to share that cost with the road project itself. Yeah.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
Mr. Rizzo, questions? I had a follow-up on that one, Andy. On Bowers, is that tied into the Highway 50? Is it, how closely is it linked to that? Because as I understand, that's to get stormwater under Highway 50, correct?
Correct. So it'll go from Arrowhead to 50, and there's an NDOT culvert, so we're hoping to work with them on potentially upsizing their culvert, and then on the other side of 50, it'll be open channel to the river.
Okay, so is that adding some uncertainty as to how long it's going to take to get done or anything, or is it all going as smoothly as can be anticipated?
Going smooth so far.
Yeah.
Good to hear.
And one thing I would add on that, on the 5-year CIP in fiscal year 29, that number jumps quite a bit. It's a little over $19 million when we get to that year, some of which, or a significant portion, is the Bowers Lane project. The anticipation is when we get there, we'll need to bond for those improvements.
I had one further question on the mosquito abatement. How is that? It just seems a little strange that would somehow be allocated to the utility funds unless it's, how is that, how does the city determine, or the city manager determine how much of that is going to the utility functions? It seems a strange way to recover for that, I guess is my point, as a taxpayer,
Yeah.
and utility user.
Yeah, and in a lot of cases, like the stormwater fund especially, our open ditches and things like that, that's where the mosquitoes breed, is the connection.
If I may, Darren Schultz, Public Works Director, it's been, mosquito abatement has been paid solely out of wastewater for a number of years. and that's been an inequity that that fund was taking the most of it. So prior to this new budget season, we sat down with Health and Parks and Open Space, and we looked at the areas in town where most treatment is happening, and then we kind of looked to divide up those areas of who was the landowner. The overall is the city, of course, but so how much of that land is owned by stormwater, how much of that land is owned by wastewater, how much of that land is owned by open space, and then how much of that land is owned by the city, but it's not any of those other three. And so we kind of reimagined that program based off of that, knowing full well that these are just estimates in the first year, and we're going to monitor it for the first year or two, and then those numbers may change a little bit because we'll have real data as to how much money was spent for abatement in those particular areas. So,
Yeah, thank you, Darren. Darren, is it, and what department is that under, is mosquito abatement?
it's under Health and Human Services.
Thanks. Any further questions?
Just a comment, Mr. Chairman. Good management and welcome to the top drawer.
Okay, and do we have any public comment, any members of the public here who wish to comment on this item on the agenda? Seeing none, do we have a motion to acknowledge the tentative stormwater utility fund budget for fiscal year 2027 is in compliance with adopted financial policies and recommend the Board of Supervisors approve the tentative stormwater utility fund budget for fiscal year 2027?
I move to acknowledge that the tentative stormwater utility fund budget for fiscal year 2027 is in compliance with the adopted financial policies, and to recommend that the Board of Supervisors approve the tentative stormwater utility fund budget for fiscal year 2027.
Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion is approved. Now, moving to item 6 on the agenda, non-action items. For discussion only, we have a presentation concerning personnel projects and planning related to Carson City Utilities from Mr. Hummel.
Yes, thank you. Again, for the record, Andy Hummel, Utility Manager for Carson City Public Works. Put together a quick presentation for you today of just kind of overview of the utility, what we've got going on, all the fun stuff we're doing. As you're well aware, water, wastewater, and stormwater are all enterprise funds. Water and wastewater, the budgets are each approximately $20 million annually, as we just saw. Stormwater is about $3 million. Water and wastewater both fall under what we call the utility division that I head up. Stormwater, the demand is in that the maintenance side of that falls under our streets division. Largely the bulk of that work is cleaning culverts and catch basins, things like that, which our street crews are maintaining the street right there. So it made sense to kind of keep that there. And then all the program stuff with that, the flood program, our NDEP permits related to stormwater, that's where Amanda gets to play and have her fun. On the water and wastewater side, we have a staff of 41, kind of divided between water production, our treatment operators, and then the distribution crews, our sewer collections team, wastewater treatment and mechanics at the wastewater plant, our environmental control group that handles making sure our businesses and industries out in the community are not sending us anything bad to the wastewater treatment plant and would potentially kill all the bugs and cause us problems. That's not all they do. They help us a lot with our landfill, our water regulatory sampling, fun stuff like that. And then we also have a certified laboratory that's housed at our wastewater treatment plant, the wharf. We have a chemist there that she does all of our regulatory sampling that we can do in-house, and every year is expanding that program to help us reduce our outside costs of sending samples to an outside lab. I like to show this one every year, kind of our utility funds distribution. In years past, I've shown Tumwa's up there as well. I didn't find theirs this year, but kind of the big one is the blue on the left. That's our capital outlay. From years past, we've been about 15 to 20% more than what Tumwa, for example, was doing on as far as capital outlay reinvesting in our system. I think, although, as you mentioned earlier, Commissioner Connect, we don't necessarily have the ability to compete in the community as far as different water purveyors, but we compete with our surrounding areas, whether it's formal or informal, trying to be better than one another. So the other one there, our principal or our employee benefits and salaries, that's down in about the 15 to I think 19% range across the three funds. So I think that's keeps us in a good, efficient place. Try to get done as much as we can with the money we get. Our water system overview, we have about 350 miles of pipeline in the city. We're divided up in about 16 pressure zones. That's governed by our 16 storage tanks that kind of help set those pressures in those zones. We have a little over a dozen booster pump stations pushing that water from zone to zone. We have a large number of pressure reducing valves or pressure reducing stations, 60 of those throughout the city that take water from a zone that's at a higher pressure and reduce it to go into a lower one. That's largely our tanks are around the outskirts of town, whereas our lowest pressure zone is in the center of the city. We don't have tanks necessarily that feed that zone directly. They're flowing through other zones to work together to make that happen. Historically, we've been about a 75% groundwater, 25% surface water in our system. That groundwater, we have about 21 active wells. Those we use those wells in a number of ways. In the winter, we're running maybe 6 to 8 of those wells. In the summer, we might be running all of them on any given day as we hit the peak of the summer. Some of them have constituents in them like arsenic or manganese that we'd have to blend with a cleaner well. So it's not a matter of just turn one on. Sometimes it's if we want to use this one, we're bringing 2 on to blend, that type of stuff to make sure we're meeting regulatory requirements, which is where our environmental control group comes in very useful to make sure we're handling that correct. We do have an arsenic treatment plant that's currently inactive. It's over kind of by the juvenile detention facility on 5th Street. That plant is fed by 2 wells. One of them is right next to the fire station in NDEP, that building. And then another well is right next to that plant. One of those wells is heavily impacted by silica in that water, and the treatment process just cannot handle that. And to run just one well with the flow rate that plant does, we were using a significant amount of processed water to do all the backwashing that it really wasn't penciling to make sense. So part of that, that's been, at least a decade since that plant has operated. Part of the supplemental funding for system studies that we're looking at for this coming year will be to look at what can we do with that plant to change that process to be able to bring that online as growth continues. The 25% number for our surface water usage, our creeks on the west side and the Marlette Hobart water system, that part of it, that makes up about 10% of our total water portfolio. Right now, we're not able to use that water because we're rebuilding our Quill water treatment plant. So we're relying more heavily on our wells as well as our intertie with Douglas County. We do have 2 of our wells are what's considered an induction well. They're located right along the river, so that water that they're pumping out, they're 300-400 feet deep, but they're considered an induction well. Use surface water rights to be able to operate those. We do have the ability, while we're not using our Ash Kings and Marlette Hobart water, we do have the ability to take that as credit for water that makes it to the river and increase our river induction well pumping. So it's not going to waste. We're able to utilize those rights in another manner while we're rebuilding the plant. And as I mentioned, the intertie with Douglas County and town and Minden that we're also relying on while we're rebuilding Quill, we're able to get about 5 million gallons a day through that system. That system serves us, serves the northern part of Douglas County, Indian Hills GID. We also have an intertie with Lyon County at Highway 50, where we're both able to put water into that tank and then both able to draw out of it. As far as water rights, our water resource portfolio, we really haven't added to this much over the years. It looks very similar to what you've seen in the past, but probably the big one, that Marlette Hobart system, as we bring Quill back online and start maximizing the amount of water we get out of that system. That was our other supplemental where we asked for additional funding in water purchases. That's where we asked for that additional funding in. It was purchasing water from the state. As we bring that plant on later in the fiscal year 27 cycle, we're going to try to get as much of that water as we can. Plus, they did raise the rates with the last legislative cycle about 10 cents per 1,000 gallons. So we're anticipating that to impact us. As far as demands, we're still holding steady. We probably about 15, well, almost 16, 17 years ago now, we were producing or using about 12,000 acre foot of water every year. We've been in the just under 9,000 to 10,000 range in the last 5-6 years. So that's largely water conservation has helped that greatly. Metered tier rates help that. Whereas you use more water, your water bill goes up exponentially, essentially. That helped that kind of keep that in check. And even before that, not having meters, as we brought meters on, then people were educated about how much water they were actually using. That helped bring that in line. So our peak day, we've been hovering just under 19 million gallons a day for the last 3 years. So keeping a close eye on that, especially with Quill down. We're able to produce before we took Quill offline, we were able to produce about 26 million gallons a day. So we're down in roughly the 24 MGD range with it off, but definitely keeps us on our toes. And I like to show this every year, our drought monitor. Obviously, it's been, a couple weeks of very wet, but otherwise oddly dry winter. The drought monitor, as of a couple weeks ago, we're showing that we're basically in kind of an abnormally dry period, the first level of a drought. So nothing to get super alarmed at yet, but definitely keep our eyes on that and hopefully keep that out of the orange and red as we move forward. But that's a little out of our hands, unfortunately. Onto the wastewater system. On this side, the city maintains and operates our collection system throughout the city. We have about 320 miles of collection system piping in the ground. We have 5 lift stations or pump stations around town. As you may have noticed in our capital plan, our biggest expenditure coming up for the next year, was rebuilding one of those lift stations, or one of our bigger ones on Morgan Mill Road. As we see increased development, especially in the east Highway 50 corridor, all of that wastewater comes to that station, and it's kind of built up on a little bluff And those have to be essentially down below the elevation of the pipe. The pipe is down in Morgan Mill Road, so it's a kind of a deep hole when we go to replace it to dig that and redo it. So that one's gonna be a fun one. We still maintain at just one treatment facility in the city, our WRF, or Water Resource Recovery Facility. That's permitted for 6.9 million gallons a day. I'll show in a minute, but we've been running just under 5.5 million gallons a day in that. So we're starting to get closer to the time when we got to think about what's this going to look like for the next iteration with some master planning that we currently have that underway. So we're ready when we get there. And then we also operate a reuse system. We're considered 100% reuse facility. So all the water that we treat, we use on our area golf courses and prison farm. So that drastically helps that impact that if those were using either creek water or they were pumping groundwater, they would be in competition with our domestic water supplies. So being able to use that greatly helps extend our resource. As far as trending, you can see we've been kind of slowly trending up. 2023, it jumped up quite a bit with the wet winter we had that year, that just incredible March and everything else. Our flows have kind of stabilized since then. We're still kind of trending up just a little bit under 1%. I think that trend line is about 0.7%. So it's kind of holding steady there. The kind of pinkish line in the middle there, the orange one at the top, that's at 6.9 million gallons a day, what we're permitted to. The next one down, that's our facility planning trigger. So that's about 5.85 million gallons a day. When we hit that point, we need to be able to tell the state or regulators, here's our plan for increasing capacity at the plant and how we're going to do that. So that master planning effort is currently underway with a consultant in anticipation of getting there in the next couple of years. Little on capital projects and planning. This photo is actually the inside of Quill with that work going on. That's looking at, on the left side, what'll be the crew area, and they'll have a process control lab and then control room in there to be able to control the operation. And then there's a wall down the middle of it. The right side will be the electrical room where all the electrical cabinets and such are housed. And then that picture was taken roughly where I was standing there is where our UV filters will be for disinfection. That project is a little bit over 50% complete at this point. We've got the filters were set last fall, just right to literally the day before the latest tariffs in Canada, because they came out of Canada, were set to go into effect. So it was nice to see those show up before that happened. As I mentioned, we're also working on our WRF master plan update. That should conclude later this year as we get into fall. We recently we did a master plan update for the Highway 50 area. That was primarily led by water, but wastewater was a pretty good component in there as well. Just basically the amount of infrastructure we would need to serve what could potentially happen up there. Needed to be able to, when developers come in, have a educated response of this is what it's going to take. A couple interesting ones that we've worked on this spring. Two of our wells, well 10 and well 44, we did some water quality profiling in those wells. It's technology that USGS developed a number of years ago, but they basically, while the pump is running, they inject at different depths in the well a dye, essentially beet juice is what they're using. And then they can tell with an instrument that detects color, and they can tell roughly how much of that they're getting out. So they can inject that at different levels in the well, and they can essentially tell where the water is coming from at various depths, how much is coming. And then they can also sample at various depths as it's going to be able to tie that water quality in with where the water's coming from. And if you're really lucky, it's all the water's coming from maybe one area and all the bad stuff in that well is coming from another, and you could possibly go in and blank off that section. Well 44 is one we've had problems with iron bacteria in that well. We haven't used it for a number of years because of that. We tried to rehab it at one point and shock chlorinated a number of times to try to kill that, and we're not successful. We don't have the final results back, but what we've seen from the water quality testing, it looks like that iron bacteria is hiding at 2 different spots in that well. So we're hopeful that if we can blank those off or possibly spot treat them in those areas, that maybe we can get some water back out of that well and be able to use it. Well 10, that one is proving a little less fun. It looks like that one's got uranium in that well, so we're able to use it basically 2 months out of the year and blend it when we do. It would be a great one if we had it back even half the capacity that it does, if we could use it year round. What we found is that one is in a really good aquifer, and it's a number of zones in there, but all the water is pretty much coming in right where the pump is set. They were not getting much detection back on the juice that they were adding. So it was telling us basically that those other zones really aren't contributing. We'll probably have to do some further testing on that one after we get past the season to see if maybe setting the pump itself at a higher elevation would get us into a better zone where we get cleaner water. So tank rehabs. We're currently rehabbing tan staffel tank. That one's underway right now. Basically take it down, empty it, clean it, remove the coating, recoat it, any structural repairs that needed to be done, upgrade the safety ladder and railing, that type of stuff. We got a couple of the tanks in the coming years. One of them up in Ash Canyon, the roof is getting pretty bad on that one. That be a bigger cost, as you may have seen in the proposed budget for the coming years. William Street, as we discussed a little. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Long ago, and far away, I became familiar with Tonstaffel.
Mm-hmm.
And it had 3 A's, not 4. What is that 4th A for?
It is, and I can't remember the exact, it's an acronym.
Right. Oh, there ain't
Yeah.
no such thing as a free lunch.
Yes.
So it was FL.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where I came from.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yep.
You don't know what the 4th A is for?
Yeah, I don't know that it was something that would necessarily be repeated in public either. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We did mention the William Street water and sewer. That one is well underway at the moment. And then another one we're getting ready to start in the end of this month, our wharf warehouse building, where we'll be building a steel structure over there, be able to house our equipment inside it. Some of the specialized sewer equipment, our Vector truck, things like that has water in it. Inside all the pumps and stuff that needs to be inside at night, especially in the winter, keep things from freezing. It gets rather expensive when that starts happening. So we'll also be able to, the bigger pumps, things like that we need spares for at the wastewater treatment plant, be able to have those inside and housed in a safe manner. A little more on our Quill water treatment plant upgrades. As we've discussed before, this is just under a $23 million construction contract. Resource Development is doing that for us. Loomis Engineering and Jacobs Engineering were the design team. The picture on the right, that's our filters, mixed media filters being offloaded from the truck and craned in. We had to remove part of the roof of the building to get those in. And then that picture in the middle, we have 2 backwash basins. So we'll be able to, as those filters do their backwash and clean, that water will go there. be able to settle that and bring that water back up to the start of the process to keep it in the program. We're starting that, the plant will be a 4 million gallon per day plant initially, to be expandable to 6 MGD. We'll have the spaces allotted in the building and ready to go for that third filter when we're ready. We're anticipating it'll be after the Marlette Hobart system is fully producing, so that, however long it takes that to fill back up and be sending us all that water again. So, and that's the picture on the right is that Marlette Hobart water system. You can kind of see all the springs, as we were talking before the meeting, Bob, that where those kind of exist there and how they come together just below Hobart. With that, at least on the water side, I think if you had anything to add, Amanda, but on the stormwater side, but at least the water and wastewater side, they're both kind of complex, dynamic systems that really work together, especially in how we use our reuse to offset water demands, things like that. We do have a good water resource portfolio. Our water rights, we're producing about 10,000 acre feet a year of water. And we have about 18,000 acre feet of available water rights. But as you can imagine, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a snap of the fingers and we can produce that. It's a lot of juggling to keep those wells in order, looking for new sources as growth continues, and then ever ratcheting regulations as those get tighter, keeping up with that, and if we need to do improvements to those sources or look for new ones. So that planning piece of it becomes important to keep ahead of that. And with that, that's what I had. Any questions?
Questions from the committee members? Ron? Connect?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got two basic questions. One is, I remember learning some time back about the uranium problem, and that the people on the right side of the country have some kind of different chemistry involved with their uranium deposits than what we have. I think that was the case. And so they crafted, back inside the Beltway, they crafted the regulations with reference to the Eastern regime. And it doesn't exactly service us the same way, and it doesn't help us. Andy, can you remind me what the difference was between the two kinds of uranium deposits and how that made a difference and a burden for us?
Not easily. I'll have to look into that. Yeah.
Okay.
I know it does, where we see it, it's largely in with the decomposed granite, which are, especially that east side.
Yeah.
Our mountains, that's where we see it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. But yeah, I'll have to look into that for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Secondly, I continue to interact with some renegades down in Douglas County and hear their complaints and read their complaints about the amount of water that's being piped up here from Minden and over the hill to Lyon County even. How much water do we get and use from Douglas County per year?
Yeah, we have a little bit over 2,700 acre feet of water rights that Carson City owns. And we get pretty close to that right now with Quill being down.
Tell me once again, they keep talking about taking it back. And it's our fault and it's our problem and they don't have to solve it. You're still comfortable that they can't get any of that water back from us?
mean, anything could happen, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, the working relationship though that we have with the Public Works and the groups down there that we work with is really good. In fact, we're meeting with them here later this month for our annual meeting, but you know, we work really well together. We don't get that impression from them that they're fighting it or not still supporting it.
Just the kind of people that I associate
Yep.
with. Thank you, Andy.
Yeah.
Thank you all, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions from the committee? I had some. Following up on Ron Connect's question, with respect to that plant that can be filled on Highway 50, that can be filled from the Dayton side or the Carson City side, are there transfers that typically occur there? Is there water flowing to Lyon County most of the time, or vice, or do we take water from them occasionally?
We're pretty fairly balanced. It kind of depends. Like last year, they had a period where they lost a well pump for a couple of weeks, and we supplied the bulk of the water during that time. We've had times when, like extended period when we had a landfill fire, that they were supplying more water to help us out. Can say that every 6 months we send each other a bill, and it is surprisingly close to within thousands of the same amount, back and forth. Yeah.
Interesting. And then, could you go back to that water portfolio slide?
Yeah.
Andy? I think that's where it was.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just, and so the Marlette Hobart system and then the East Side Springs, you said it was 75-25 approximately surface water, well water?
Yeah, that's what we have been running at. We're probably closer to about 80 to 85% groundwater and 10 to 15% surface water right now because of Quill being offline. Once Quill comes back on, we think that'll get, we should be able to get that closer to 35 to 40% surface water. Yeah.
And then with respect to the arsenic plant that's not working, are we just not using the wells that were creating the arsenic issue? Or was that plant being used to treat arsenic in the system from other water sources?
It was, that plant specifically treated 2 wells, and yeah, those wells are not being used at the moment. Yeah.
And not needed in the near future?
We're thinking probably in that 5 to 10 year time frame we will need them. So yeah, we want to start looking at that plant again.
And then on the induction wells, with Quill down, you're using those induction wells, you have the legal ability to draw more out of those induction wells?
Yeah, with our exchanges from the Ash and Kings Creek water, we have temporary exchanges in place to be able to, since that water is going to the river that would have otherwise went into the plant, that we can credit that back to those wells.
And does increased use of those wells affect the water quality out of them?
It doesn't seem to be. Yeah.
And let's see. Finally, just out of curiosity, Lost Lake, Mud Lake, and Ambrosetti Pond, where are those?
Lost Lake and Mud Lake, those are both up in the Sierras. So, like Lost Lake is down Hope Valley area at the southern end of that. Those are Lost Lake and Mud Lake are both owned by Carson Water Subconservancy District, and we have agreements in place with them to be able to utilize the releases from those lakes to offset our usage in the induction wells. So they tend to, like this year, for example, the water release from those 2 sources they basically carried us through the winter. And then Ambrosetti Pond, that is out in Douglas County. It is, if you travel between here and Gardnerville, off to the right side, as you're going south, there's a property that he's put in some vines, and there's a couple of dinosaur statues. That pond is on that property. You really can't see it from the highway, but it's essentially a tailwater pond from all the other irrigation usage out there. We have acquired those rights years ago, the tailwater rights, so we're storing them in that. And as we release those to the river, then we can use that as an offset to the induction well pumping.
Interesting, interesting. Oh, and then if on the next, you had a slide that showed the, exactly, water system demand.
Okay.
On the effluent, the treated effluent,
Mhm.
did that decline in, annual water usage, acre feet? Was there change from treated water to effluent along there? Did that impact that at all, or is that's been all in place since before 2008?
Yeah, the reuse program, that went into effect, we really started it in the early 80s with Eagle Valley Golf Course. And then we do see a little bit of a blip on this graph, 2013. There's a little bit of an upward tick. We used to water like Mills Park, the cemetery, the Centennial Park, those areas with effluent. At that time, we were in the middle of a drought, and they were supplementing the reuse program with treated water to keep it alive, essentially. And we pulled all the parks off of that rather than just pump that water in there, we put those back on the domestic system. So that would have ticked the water usage up a couple of 100 acre feet. Yeah.
Okay.
I've just been kind of watching that over the years to see when it's appropriate to bring those back on.
Can you go back to the water rights slide that was before this?
Yeah.
So just to clarify, the Carson Valley groundwater wells and the Minden wells that has the 3,553 acre feet.
Yep.
You said right now you guys are only pulling out about 2,700 acre feet.
Yeah, we have just under 2,300, and then we also have the ability to use more if we
Okay.
wanted. So we've been
And
maximizing that last
when
couple
you-
of years.
When you guys acquired these groundwater rights, was that just for that connection, or did you guys have those before?
As far as the actual history on that, Darren knows that much better. Yeah, both.
Okay.
Yeah. Some
So
of them
I
we
was
already
just
had.
wondering if,
Mhm.
maybe in response that, probably had some of those water rights in
Yeah.
history and, in time. And so it wasn't like just for that intertie. So
Yeah.
it was probably a lot longer than just this recent
Yeah.
intertie. You can say in response that, it's
Yeah,
not
we are-
something that you just recently started stealing water from.
Yeah.
Minden.
Yeah, we are a valid water rights holder there, and were
Yes.
before that
You know,
started. Yeah.
similar to some of these other ones. It's
Yep.
just,
Yep.
smart water planning.
So, Ron Connect, you can relay that to your Douglas friends.
Yes.
Yep.
This was all our water a
Yeah.
long time ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And buy him a cup of whiskey, or not cup,
Yeah.
glass of whiskey and
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting over.
Yep.
So-
Any further questions from the committee?
Yes, I have, back to the arsenic wells, the two wells with the arsenic in them. Are there plans to do the USGS testing on those as well to see if maybe there's a different zone that you can draw from?
That is on the radar. We don't have them scheduled yet, but yeah, that was one of the thoughts as we start to look at that, to look at both of those. Yeah.
Any further questions? All right, and that is a non-action item, so we've concluded. Public comment. I guess
Yep.
we can, are there any members of the public who would wish to address the committee with comments on agenda item 6? And let the record reflect, there are no members of the public wishing to comment on that item. Moving right on to item 7, general public comment. The public is invited at this time to provide comments on any topic that relates to a matter of which this public body has supervision, control, jurisdiction, or advisory power. Doesn't need to be an item specifically mentioned on the agenda. Any members of the public who wish to address the committee at this time? Let the record reflect, there are no members of the public. Item 8, adjournment.
I move that we move, that we move.
Do we have a second to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right. Committee is adjourned.